Well, in that video, you see that the dichotomistic and holistic continua is not limited to cultures, but also to men and women, right? So, men are more dichotomistic than women. They're more holistic. American men and American women. But you also might look at other cultures. For instance, the author of this book, he spent some time with a group of people called the Yapese people who live in the South Pacific, and they would be much more holistic than either American men or American women. They're much further down the continua. But of course, we can already see differences just within our own culture. Someone who is dichotomistic would tend to judge people based on their actions, and for instance, if a famous evangelical preacher was revealed as having an affair, then someone in a dichotomistic culture might say, okay, that's it, this person needs to get out of here. Whereas someone in more of a holistic culture, or someone with a more holistic mindset, might say, well, we're all sinners, we've all done something wrong, and this person, look at all the good things they've done in their life, let's give them a second chance. So the continua applies to personality types, it applies to cultures, and it even applies to the differences between men and women in general. Okay, the next continua is status focus versus achievement focus. Status focused cultures are especially concerned with your social position, and this social position is ascribed to you through your birth. So it has everything to do with who your mother and father are and what status they already have in society. This status is generally permanent. You don't usually change it, and usually you only associate it with people who are of equal status as you. The caste system in India is one example of a very strongly status-focused culture. Achievement-focused, on the other hand, is pretty much the American dream of rags to riches. In America, you can be born into a poor family of very low status, and if you work hard enough and you achieve enough, then you can rise. And so an achievement-focused culture really puts all the value on someone's accomplishments and what they've achieved. Their status is very fluid depending on what they have achieved, and they tend to spend time with other people who have achieved similar things, regardless of their family background. So another example of the difference between status and achievement-based culture actually happened to my husband. When he went to Korea, he was a teacher. And in the Korean school, the first day he arrived, even before he went to the school, they stood him up in front of the whole church. They gave him a large financial gift, and they highly praised and lauded him for being their new teacher from America. And then they also put him in the choir, regardless of his singing ability. They thought it would be so great for the status of the choir to have a Western teacher singing. And he is a good singer, and he's a really great teacher, but it didn't really matter to them how good he was. They didn't even watch him teach before they gave him that status. Because as a Westerner, he already had that high status in the society, and they gave him all of the privileges that can go along with that even before they saw him perform in his role. The next continua is crisis orientation versus non-crisis orientation. Now, crisis-oriented cultures expect problems and plan ahead and think of lots of possible scenarios and value the input of experts. So, crisis-oriented cultures, their favorite word is insurance. American culture is very crisis-oriented. We have so many different kinds of insurance. I just Googled it. And I found not only medical insurance and car insurance and life insurance, there's renter's insurance and identity insurance and pet insurance and tuition insurance and interest rate insurance. There's every kind of insurance you can imagine out there. You can buy it. Because we're always thinking ahead. What kind of crisis is going to happen? Even here in our school system, all of these drills that we do. We have Lahar drills and fire drills and shelter-in-place drills and lockdown drills. And I'm not questioning their value, but they do reflect the fact that we are a crisis-oriented culture. We prepare for crisis far in advance. Now, a non-crisis-oriented culture, on the other hand, doesn't worry about it. They minimize the likelihood of bad things happening, and they figure when it does happen, they'll take it on then. They don't want to waste a lot of energy and money on something that hasn't happened yet. When they look at all the insurance money that we spend, hundreds and thousands and even millions of dollars for institutions, they think, what a waste. You're spending all this money, by and large, on something that never happens. So for them, they think we waste money because we spend it on preparing for something that may or may not happen in the future. They also distrust experts. That's partly because they believe when a crisis does occur, everyone's in the same boat, so it doesn't matter if you're an expert or not. If a war has begun in your country, the experts don't have that much of an advantage over the normal people because you've all got to deal with the circumstances. I encountered a non-crisis oriented culture when I spent some time in the Middle East. I was in Lebanon in the summer of 2006, and during my time there, I was only there for a month, taking a course to be certified as an ESL teacher, and about 10 days in, a bomb fell on the airport, and what began was a 2-month war between Israel and Hezbollah. And I was freaked out because I had not planned what I was going to do in such a circumstance. I had only been there a little while. I didn't have a well-established network there, and I didn't know how to get out of the country. I felt unprepared, and I felt out of control. And it was very, very challenging and very, very difficult for me. I wanted answers, I wanted plans, I wanted to know what was happening, when the U.S. Embassy was going to evacuate us, what day, what time, what hour. And by contrast, the Lebanese people that I encountered were very relaxed. They weren't happy by any means. They were definitely sad and concerned, but they were not as stressed as I was. They were not as anxious, partly because they've grown up there and they're used to crises just popping up, and they know that they're out of control. For me, the feeling of being out of control and unprepared was very foreign, but for them it was very normal. So they were very friendly and helpful to me, but they didn't quite understand why I was so hyped up over this situation. But they helped me get out of there, and I really appreciated my time with them. And I appreciated what I learned from them about people living in those kinds of circumstances. So the next slide is the final continua from Lingenfelter and Myers. It's task orientation versus person orientation. So task-oriented people focus on achieving goals and getting the job done. They sometimes expect loneliness. They might work long hours, not go home for dinner with their families, anything. They will sacrifice relationship. They will sacrifice friendship. They will sacrifice anything in order to get a goal achieved, to get money earned. Workaholic Americans are task-oriented people. They often see the people on the other side of the continua, which is the person-oriented people, as kind of lazy and unfocused. And they think, why don't those people start working instead of talking with their friends all the time? But person-oriented people are just that. They value relationships, they value group interaction over a task and over a job. And to them, they think that the task-oriented persons are cold and impersonal. What about you? This is our first assignment for this lesson. I want you to go to your copy of Ministering Cross-Culturally, the one that you've either bought or are borrowing, and turn to page 30. There's a questionnaire that gives you a profile of your basic values. Okay, you have to go through, answer the 48 questions, and if you're borrowing a copy, obviously, write your answers on another paper, and then go through and score your answers according to the system on page 34. Then, in the file, the Moodle file for this class, you'll find assignment 2A, and on assignment 2A there are charts like the ones at the bottom of this slide and the next two slides. Time versus event, dichotomistic versus holistic, crisis-oriented versus non-crisis-oriented, task versus person, and status versus achievement. I want you to plot yourself on each of those charts according to what you discovered in the Ministering Cross-Culturally questionnaire. Then I want you to think about 1, 2, or 3 students you have taught and think of their culture, and based on your experience of them, plot them on the same charts but in a different color. Then I want you to write a short explanation of each of the 5 charts and tell me why you plotted your student where you plotted them on the chart. What have you observed about their behavior that tells you they are more time-oriented or less time-oriented than you are? What have they done that shows you they are more focused on status than achievement? Like that. So, that is assignment 2.